The factory used in the early part of this movie looks a lot like the factory in the opening of Wolf Warrior. I'm not saying all Chinese factories look alike, it's just something I noticed.
也不用怕，只要记住自己是谁。
Hi, welcome to the Silver Spleen. My name is Rex Barber, and this is my review of Extraordinary Mission. Director Alan Mak and writer Felix Chung have made quite a few movies I've really enjoyed. There are too many of them to list, but obviously the best known of them would be the Infernal Affairs trilogy. Cinematographer Fletcher Poon, whose work also speaks for itself, makes his co-directorial debut in Extraordinary Mission, a story about an undercover cop who struggles to keep his focus while trying to take down a drug kingpin, which, as Chinese language movie stories go, is not really extraordinary. What is surprising about Extraordinary Mission is some of the things that it shows and some of the things that happen in the story over the course of the film. The drug kingpin is Chinese. His drug ring operates in China. There's police corruption in China. I was very surprised and even impressed that this sort of thing was allowed in a China film, because until very recently talking about those things in movies was forbidden. And I have to admit, it made me a lot more interested in the movie. It also made things relatively more realistic, and it made me want to see where the movie was going and how it got there. Unfortunately, that's where Extraordinary Mission turns out to be rather underwhelming. Telling stories about people's emotional states and psychological motivations is never easy. It's especially difficult when your film is being written and made for a market controlled by a governmental department that expects a certain moral clarity in your narrative. You can't just imply that things are good or bad and let the viewer kind of take that in. You have to say it loudly, which the music in this movie certainly does. Listening to the soundtrack of this movie would be exhausting. So the overstatement in the script is understandable, but not really enjoyable. Which is a shame, because there's a good story in here and some very good subplot ideas. They just don't survive the telling. It's kind of like listening to somebody tell a story when they have a face full of Novocaine. Subtlety is the first casualty. It ends up being a problem in more than just the story, though. The devil is in the details, as they say, and this movie unfortunately proves it. For as much as Extraordinary Mission gets right in terms of styles or themes, there are some pretty bizarre lapses in basic logic. Smuggling heroin in logged trees is a good idea. Using chainsaws to cut open the trees where you've put the heroin in plastic bags isn't. Neither is making your underling prove his loyalty by turning him into a heroin addict. Junkies are not the kind of people you want to do business with or have working for you, from what I've read. I mean, didn't these guys ever watch Scarface?
Lesson number 2, don't get high on your own supply.
The depictions of drug use and withdrawal are pretty cheesy, but I've gotten so used to it that frankly I'd be shocked if it was otherwise. I was shocked by the incredibly implausible Infernal Affairs Morse code rehash. Yay for cool points, but it's so completely impossible from a practical standpoint that I almost turned the movie off. Speaking of bad ideas, the whole bullet time shot could have been left out. So could the shot where one guy jumps this way firing guns and then the other guy jumps this way firing... No. The other thing you could have left out was the female lead. I really can't figure out what she added to the film other than a very contrived plot twist late in the third act. And I'm not blaming the actress who had almost nothing to work with. I'm really not. In fact, if anybody deserves credit for Extraordinary Mission, it's the cast and crew. This movie isn't bad in most ways, and in some ways it is really, really good. There's more than a few moments in this film where I was very positively impressed by certain camera movements or angles, and those moments helped keep me interested because the rest of the film isn't always as good. The main cast performs pretty well, some better than others, but it's at least obvious to see that everybody tried, and to be honest, I always feel like that's all I could ask. This movie is just hammering hamstrung by things that are out of the cast's control. I really wanted Extraordinary Mission to be better than it is. And while that sounds negative, I actually mean it just the opposite way. There's a really good movie in here somewhere, but it's obscured by some of the things that surround it. I was disappointed by this movie, but mostly just because I felt like it was trying its best and it deserved to be better. Sometimes, it might have tried too hard, or maybe at times it tried harder than its budget should have allowed. What I mean is that some of the things that are attempted in this movie would look a lot better and be more convincing and or impressive in a big budget movie. This isn't one of those movies. The look and feel of Extraordinary Mission is very direct to video, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way. But as the saying goes, stay in your lane. As a B movie, Extraordinary Mission is really, really good. It provides the audience with what it wants, and that's what it's supposed to do. But there's a lot of stuff in here that points to a much better movie that unfortunately didn't get made for one reason or another. I was disappointed by this movie, but you might really enjoy it. If you get a chance to see it, go ahead and do that. But do me and the filmmakers a favor and pay for the privilege, because, that's how it works. It's available on DVD fairly cheap, so there's always that option. And while I don't necessarily think it's going to be a big rewatch kind of movie, maybe for you it is, and that's fine. And as long as we're talking about spending money, please take a moment and click on my Patreon page, because for just $1 a month, you could provide clean water, dental care, and needed vaccinations for... No. Well, for just $1 a month, you could make my life a lot better. How about that? If you enjoyed my review, please leave me a comment. If you didn't, leave me a comment. Just make sure that it makes sense. If you enjoy the channel, please subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.